Most people think a garden has an off-season. It does not. Their garden does. There is a difference, and that difference is worth understanding before you spend another August walking past empty beds that could be doing something. Right now, in July, the soil in your yard is sitting at temperatures that seed catalogs use to charge a premium to replicate inside a greenhouse. The ground has been building heat since April. The top 6 inches of soil in most American gardens right now are warmer than they will be at any other point in the entire year. A seed that needed 2 weeks to push through cold spring soil will do the same thing in 4 days right now. The biology is working in your favor in July in a way it simply is not in April, and almost nobody is taking advantage of it. What I am giving you today is 9 flowers you have probably never thought of as July plants. Not because they are unusual or hard to find, because the garden industry has a financial interest in you believing that flowers come from transplant flats purchased in May, not from $2 seed packets pressed into warm July ground. A direct-sown plant that germinates in your soil, roots into your specific ground, and establishes on its own terms will outperform a greenhouse transplant dropped into alien soil every single time by September. The root system is deeper, the establishment is cleaner. The plant does not spend its first 3 weeks recovering from the trauma of being moved. 9 flowers, all direct-sown, all biologically suited to July soil in ways most gardeners have never been told. Here are the 2 things I want you to keep in the back of your mind right now. Number 6 on this list does something underground that will change how every plant you grow near it performs next season. And number 9 is the most visually dramatic plant on this list, with a hollow stem problem that causes almost every gardener who tries to cut it for a vase to give up on it entirely. I am going to give you the fix that most sources never mention. But you have to stay with me because I am not getting there until we have worked through the plants that make it worth the wait. This channel exists to give you exactly this kind of information, the stuff most gardeners never find until the season is already gone. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Every week this channel publishes real planting information that keeps your garden producing when everyone else's has stopped. Subscribe so it finds you directly. Before we start, tell me in the comments what zone you are gardening in and what is sitting empty in your beds right now. I want to know what problem we are actually solving today. Let's go. Plant number 1. Cleome, spider flower. Variety defined, Señorita Rosalita or the Sparkler series. Cleome hasleriana is one of the most underused late-season flowers in American home gardening, and the reason it belongs specifically in July soil comes down to a temperature response that most gardeners have never been told about. Cleome seeds have a built-in germination inhibitor that warm soil deactivates. In cool spring soil, that inhibitor keeps the seed dormant even when conditions look favorable from the outside. Gardeners sow it in April, nothing comes up, they assume failure and move on. In July soil sitting above 70 degrees Fahrenheit, that inhibitor is chemically deactivated and germination proceeds in 5 to 7 days with a reliability that spring sowing almost never produces. The plant itself reaches 4 to 5 feet tall and produces branching clusters of flowers in white, pink, rose, and deep purple that open from the bottom of the cluster upward, meaning the plant is always simultaneously in bud, in bloom, and in seed. That continuous flowering mechanism is not common among annuals, and it is why a single Cleome plant produces blooms from the time it starts until frost cuts it down. The flowers have a light fragrance that intensifies in the evening and draws sphinx moths and hummingbirds in a way that most gardeners find genuinely startling the first time they witness it. Señorita Rosalita is the variety that changed how professional gardeners think about Cleome. It is sterile, meaning it produces no viable seed and does not self-sow aggressively the way standard Cleome does. It also lacks the sticky, slightly unpleasant-smelling foliage that old varieties carried. It blooms in soft lavender pink continuously without deadheading and stays at a more manageable 3 feet. If you want the full architectural height and self-sowing behavior that fills a bed over multiple years from one planting, look at the original Sparkler series in white, blush, and violet. One cultural note that most sources get wrong about Cleome: do not start it indoors. The taproot begins forming immediately after germination, and any root disturbance before transplanting produces a permanently stunted plant. Direct sowing is not a convenience with Cleome. It is a biological requirement. Surface sow or cover lightly at 1/8 of an inch. Keep the surface moist for the first week. Once seedlings are 2 inches tall, thin to 18 inches. What feels like too much space in July becomes exactly right by September when these plants are 4 feet tall and branching in every direction. Hardy and USDA, zones 3 through 10 for July sowing. Plant number 2, laceflower. Didiscus, variety to find. Trachymene cerulean blue. Blue laceflower is the cut flower that florists charge premium prices for and that almost no American home gardener grows, almost entirely because it has been incorrectly positioned as a spring plant in most reference material. A single stem of blue laceflower in a florist's shop costs more than most gardeners spend on an entire seed packet. The florist knows something the home gardener does not. Now you do too. The flowers are soft powder blue umbels, clusters of tiny blooms arranged in a flat disc shape that looks like a blue version of Queen Anne's lace. That specific blue is rare among summer annuals in the way that true blue is always rare. In a late-season garden where most flowers are running orange, gold, rust, and burgundy, a stem of blue laceflower reads like a correction. It makes everything around it look more composed, more intentional. Trachymene is a cool season bloomer by nature, which means a July sowing that establishes the plant through August will push it directly into its natural bloom preference as temperatures moderate in September and October. You are aligning the plant's biological preference with the season rather than fighting the season to force early spring bloom. The result is a plant that performs at its genuine peak rather than under duress. Direct-sow seeds at a 1/4 inch depth. Germination takes 10 to 14 days in July soil. Thin to 9 inches apart. The plants reach 18 to 24 inches tall on slender branching stems that move in a breeze in a way that looks genuinely designed. One critical cultural instruction. Trachymene has a taproot that does not tolerate disturbance after establishment. This is a plant you do not move, do not transplant between beds, and do not start in a cell pack. It goes in the ground where it will live from the moment of sowing. Every nursery transplant you have ever seen of this plant was compromised the moment it left its original container. Cut stems early in the morning when only a third of the small flowers in each cluster have opened. They continue opening in the vase over several days and have a vase life of 10 to 14 days in clean water. A single mature plant produces enough stems for weekly cutting throughout fall without reducing the garden display. USDA zones 3 through 9 for July sowing. Zone 10 gardeners should wait until late August when nighttime temperatures begin to drop. Plant number 3. Flowering kale and ornamental cabbage. Varieties to find. Nagoya series, Osaka series, or red boar kale. Before you dismiss this as a supermarket parking lot plant, stay with me for 60 seconds. Because what most American gardeners have encountered is the worst expression of this plant, and the best expression is something genuinely different. Brassica oleracea in its ornamental forms produces rosettes of deeply textured, frilled and cut foliage in combinations of white, cream, rose, burgundy and deep purple blue that intensify in color as temperatures drop in fall. This is the critical point. The color in ornamental kale and cabbage is not static. It develops. A plant that looks moderately interesting in September looks genuinely spectacular in October and reaches its full visual peak after the first light frost of November. Cold does not damage ornamental brassicas. Cold is the mechanism that makes them beautiful. A July sowing produces transplant-ready seedlings in 3 to 4 weeks that go into the garden in August and September, building root systems and establishing leaf structure through the warmest remaining weeks before the cooling process begins. By October, when every annual in the garden is declining or dead, ornamental brassicas are hitting their peak performance. They are, in a very specific sense, the only flowers on this list that improve with frost. The Nagoya series in rose and red produces tightly ruffled rosettes with exceptional color saturation that holds through hard freezes in zones 5 and 6. The Osaka series in pink and red is more heat-tolerant during establishment, making it the better choice for gardeners in zones 7 and 8 starting in July heat. Red boar kale produces deeply frilled blue-purple foliage on plants that reach 2 feet tall and carries more architectural weight than any compact ornamental variety. Sow seeds a 1/4 inch deep. Germination in 5 to 7 days. Thin to 18 inches for compact rosette types, 24 inches for taller kale varieties. Full sun produces the best color. Afternoon shade in zones 7 and above during the heat of establishment reduces stress without compromising the fall display. USDA zones 3 through 9. The colder your winter, the better the fall display. Plant number 4. Love in a Mist, Nigella. Variety to find, Miss Jekyll series or Persian jewels. Nigella damascena is the flower that garden designers use to make a planting look like it has been growing wild and deliberately for decades simultaneously. The flowers are intricate, almost architectural, sitting inside a froth of finely cut thread-like foliage that surrounds each bloom like a green Elizabethan collar. The effect is unlike anything else in the annual garden. Miss Jekyll series delivers the clearest, most saturated blue of any Nigella variety available in the U.S. market. Persian Jewels gives you a full mix of soft blue, white, rose, and deep violet on plants that self-sow reliably and naturalize over multiple seasons from a single July planting. The seed pods that follow the flowers are arguably more interesting than the flowers themselves. Inflated, papery, striped in green and burgundy, they persist on the plant through fall and into winter, providing structural interest long after the blooms are gone. A planting of Nigella in July gives you flowers in September and decorative seed pods through October and November. 2 distinct performances from one sowing. Here is the cultural fact that determines whether Nigella thrives or struggles in a July planting. It needs to be sown where it will live permanently without any disturbance of the root system. Nigella develops a taproot almost immediately after germination and will not recover from transplanting. What it will do, if you sow it in July and keep the seedbed consistently moist through germination, is establish quickly in warm soil and redirect its energy into root development through August, positioning itself to bloom as temperatures moderate. Surface sow or cover very lightly. Germination in 10 to 14 days. Thin to 6 inches apart. The plants reach 12 to 18 inches and do not require staking in most conditions. The seed pods dry perfectly on the plant and can be cut and brought indoors for arrangements that last through winter without any treatment. A planting of Nigella in July essentially provides you with free dried flower material for the following 4 months. USDA zones 3 through 9. In zones 3 and 4, sow by mid-July to ensure bloom before first frost. Plant number 5. Status, Sea Lavender. Varieties to find, QIS series, Fortress series, or Purple Attraction. Limonium sinuatum is one of the most misunderstood plants in American gardening, consistently dismissed as an old-fashioned filler flower while simultaneously being one of the most drought-tolerant, heat-resistant, biologically fascinating annuals available to home gardeners. The flowers are tiny, papery, and clustered in dense branching sprays in purple, blue, white, yellow, rose, and apricot. They have one property that no other flower on this list shares. They dry on the plant. The papery texture means they hold their color and structure without any intervention, converting naturally from fresh flowers to dried flowers as the season progresses. A planting of Status in July gives you fresh flowers in September and a natural dried flower arrangement standing in your garden through November that requires no cutting, no drying rack, no glycerin treatment. Status is a coastal Mediterranean native that evolved in thin, saline, mineral-poor soil with significant drought stress. This evolutionary background makes it one of the most forgiving plants you can direct sow in July. Heat does not concern it. Poor soil is its native condition. Inconsistent watering, which is the reality for most gardeners in August, produces no visible stress response in a well-established Status plant. QIS series Status is bred specifically for cut flower production and produces longer, straighter stems with larger flower clusters than standard mixed varieties. Fortress series is the most heat-tolerant group available and is the correct choice for July sowing in zones 7 through 9. Purple Attraction produces the deepest, most saturated purple of any Status variety currently available to home gardeners. Sow seeds at a 1/4 inch depth. Germination takes 10 to 14 days and is improved by soaking seeds for 2 hours before sowing. Thin to 12 inches apart. Plants reach 18 to 24 inches with branching stems that hold the flower clusters above the foliage. USDA zones 3 through 10 for July sowing. Of the first 5 plants on this list, which one have you never grown and which one are you most skeptical about? Tell me both and tell me your zone in the comments. The conversation between gardeners in different zones in this comment section is one of the most genuinely useful resources I know of for figuring out what actually works where you live. Plant number 6. Phacelia. Variety to find, Phacelia tanacetifolia straight species. This is the plant I told you about at the start of this video, the one that does something underground. Phacelia is a green manure crop and a flowering ornamental simultaneously, and the combination of those two functions in one plant is something almost no gardener is currently using in their beds. The flowers are soft lavender blue, bell-shaped, produced on coiling stems that uncurl as each bloom opens in a sequence that botanists call a scorpioid cyme. They are visually unusual in a way that draws questions from everyone who sees them, and they attract more bee species per square foot than almost any other annual available to home gardeners. Bumblebees, honeybees, mason bees, and multiple solitary bee species work Phacelia flowers from the moment they open until the plant finishes. But the underground function is what makes Phacelia genuinely different from everything else on this list. Phacelia roots secrete compounds that break up compacted clay soil structure as they grow, a process called biodrilling that improves drainage and aeration for every plant that comes after it. The root mass, when it decomposes after the plant finishes, adds organic matter directly to the soil in the bed. A planting of Phacelia in a bed that has been sitting bare since a spring crop finished is actively improving the physical structure and organic content of that soil while simultaneously producing flowers and feeding pollinators. When you remove the plant in fall and till the root mass in, you are leaving the bed measurably better than it was before you planted. Phacelia germinates in 5 to 10 days in July soil and requires almost nothing in the way of soil preparation. Surface sow or cover lightly at 1/8 of an inch, thin to 9 inches apart. Plants reach 12 to 18 inches. They bloom approximately 6 weeks from sowing, which puts a July planting in bloom by mid to late August. There are no widely distributed named varieties of Phacelia in the U.S. market. The straight species is what you will find, and it is exactly what you want. Seek it out from wildflower seed suppliers or organic gardening sources. USDA zones 3 through 9 for July sowing. If you found this video halfway through someone sharing it and you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment. This is what this channel does every single week. Real biology, real variety recommendations, real information that most gardening sources never tell you. Subscribe now so the next one lands directly in your feed. Plant number 7. Rudbeckia hirta. Annual black-eyed Susan. Varieties to find: cherry brandy, prairie sun, or Indian summer. Not the perennial, the annual. This distinction matters, and most gardeners have never been told it exists. Rudbeckia hirta behaves as an annual or short-lived biennial depending on your zone. The annual forms, specifically the varieties developed for first-year flowering from seed, are among the fastest-blooming, most heat-tolerant flowers available for a July sowing. They reach first bloom in 55 to 65 days, which means a July sowing is in flower by September and continues until hard frost. Here is the insight most gardeners never receive. Annual Rudbeckia hirta varieties, sown in warm July soil, establish a root system that is structurally superior to the same variety planted from a transplant in spring. The roots go deeper, follow moisture gradients into the subsoil, and produce a plant that is noticeably more drought-resistant and more wind-stable than any transplanted specimen. By September, the difference between a direct-sown July plant and a May transplant is visible from across the yard in terms of stem strength and bloom density. Cherry brandy produces flowers in a deep mahogany burgundy that are unlike anything most gardeners associate with black-eyed Susans. It reads as a completely different plant from across the garden and pairs with autumn foliage in a way that looks genuinely designed. Prairie Sun is a pollen-free variety that produces golden yellow flowers with a green center rather than the standard dark center, giving it a cleaner, more refined look that works well in cut flower arrangements. Indian Summer produces flowers up to 6 inches across on plants that reach 3 feet, the largest flowers of any annual Rudbeckia variety available. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, germination in 7 to 10 days, thin to 12 inches, full sun, tolerates poor soil and moderate drought once established. Of everything on this list so far, which plant genuinely surprised you the most? Not which one you plan to grow. Which one surprised you that it worked this way, that it existed, that nobody had ever told you about it before today? Drop that in the comments right now with your zone. A gardener dealing with your exact conditions is reading what you write. USDA zones 3 through 10. Plant number 8. Gomphrena. Globe amaranth. Varieties to find: QIS carmine, QIS purple, fireworks, or strawberry fields. Gomphrena globosa is the flower that thrives specifically in the conditions that defeat most other flowers in a July garden. Peak summer heat, inconsistent rainfall, humid nights that invite fungal disease in everything else. Gomphrena treats these conditions as its native environment because that is exactly what they are. This is a tropical annual from Central America and South Asia. It evolved in conditions of high heat, high humidity, and intermittent drought. When you direct sow it in July, you are not asking it to tolerate difficult conditions. You are giving it its preferred habitat. The flowers are small, clover-shaped heads in deep magenta, purple, orange, white, and pink that hold their color and structure both on the plant and after cutting with an intensity that surpasses almost every other annual in the late summer garden. They do not wilt in heat. They do not fade in full sun. Cut them at any stage from bud to full bloom, and they dry perfectly without any treatment, holding color for months indoors. Gomphrena is simultaneously a fresh-cut flower, a dried flower, and a garden ornamental from one planting. QIS carmine and QIS purple are the cut flower varieties bred for long stems and concentrated color. Fireworks produces elongated flower spikes rather than round heads, giving it a structural quality that works differently in the garden and in arrangements. Strawberry Fields produces intense scarlet heads on plants that reach 24 inches and is considered one of the most heat and humidity-tolerant varieties available. Sow seeds at a 1/4 inch depth after soaking overnight, which significantly improves germination rate and speed. Germination takes 7 to 14 days in warm soil, thin to 12 inches. Once established, Gomphrena requires almost no supplemental watering in most U.S. zones. Use to zones 3 through 11 for July sowing. Plant number 9. Tithonia. Mexican sunflower. Varieties to find: Torch, Fiesta del Sol, or Goldfinger. I saved Tithonia rotundifolia for last because it is the most visually dramatic plant on this list, and because it has a problem that causes almost every gardener who tries to cut it for a vase to give up on it permanently, and a fix that takes 5 seconds and works every single time. Tithonia produces flowers that are a specific shade of deep burnt orange, nearly fluorescent in full sun, that exists nowhere else in the annual garden at this intensity. Not orange-yellow like a marigold, not orange-red like a zinnia. A pure, saturated, almost molten orange that reads from 50 feet away and makes every other color near it look more vivid by contrast. In a late summer and fall garden naturally running toward gold and rust, a planting of Tithonia is the anchor that holds the entire color scheme together. The plant reaches 4 to 6 feet tall in a single season from a July sowing. The branching is prolific. Each branch terminates in a single bloom that is 3 to 4 inches across. And migrating monarch butterflies use these flowers as a consistent fuel stop from the moment the plant begins blooming through the end of the season. Now the hollow stem fix I promised you. When you cut Tithonia for a vase, the stem is hollow and water enters unevenly, causing the flower to wilt within hours regardless of how fresh the cut was. This is why most people give up on Tithonia as a cut flower. The fix is specific and it works every time. Immediately after cutting, sear the cut end of the stem in a flame for 3 to 5 seconds or plunge it into boiling water for the same duration. This seals the hollow stem tissue and allows the flower to draw water normally. Vase life goes from a few hours to 7 to 10 days with this one step. Most sources never tell you this. Now you know. Torch is the standard tall variety at 4 to 5 feet that produces the largest individual flowers. Fiesta del Sol is a compact variety at 24 to 30 inches, developed for containers and smaller beds that reaches first bloom faster than the tall types, approximately 60 days from sowing. Goldfinger is a medium-height variety at 30 inches with flowers that carry a slightly warmer, more golden tone than the standard deep orange. Sow seeds at a 1/4 inch depth. Germination in 5 to 7 days in July soil. Thin to 24 inches for tall varieties, 12 to 18 for compact types. Full sun. Lean to average soil produces better branching and more blooms than rich amended beds. USDA zones 3 through 11 for July sowing. Here is how to use this list practically before you go. For immediate impact, the plants that will be blooming on the earliest timeline from a July sowing: Gomphrena, Rudbeckia, and Tithonia. All three reach first bloom in 55 to 65 days. Sow these this week. For the cut flower garden, laceflower, statice, nigella, and gomphrena. These four together provide fresh cutting material from September through November, and statice provides dried material that persists through winter without any intervention. For the pollinator and beneficial insect garden, Phacelia, Cleome, and nigella. Phacelia specifically draws more documented bee species per square foot than almost any other annual available to home gardeners. Plant it in any bed that has been sitting bare since spring, and you will close the season with better soil and a better insect population than you started with. For the structural and architectural garden, Cleome, Tithonia, and ornamental kale. These three provide height, drama, and seasonal interest from September through the first hard freeze, and in the case of ornamental kale, beyond it. 4 rules that apply across every plant on this list. 1. Sow directly into the ground where the plant will grow. Every plant on this list has a root system that establishes more effectively without transplant disturbance. The seed packet is not a compromise, it is the correct method. 2. Keep the seedbed consistently moist until germination is complete. This is the only period where consistent attention is required. Once seedlings have their first set of true leaves, most of these plants can manage normal summer conditions without supplemental watering. 3. Thin to the correct spacing without compromise. Crowded plants compete for light and air. Fungal disease establishes in dense, humid canopies. The correct spacing feels too generous when seedlings are small and looks exactly right by September. 4. Do not amend heavily or fertilize aggressively. Most of the plants on this list evolved in lean conditions and produce their best flowering response when soil fertility is moderate, not high. Rich soil pushes vegetative growth at the expense of bloom production in nearly every case. Here is what I want from you in the comments before you close this video. Tell me which of these 9 plants you have never heard of before today. Tell me which one you are sowing this week. And tell me what is sitting empty in your garden right now that one of these plants is going to fill. Drop all 3 answers with your zone, because the gardener in your zone who is 3 comments below yours right now is making planting decisions based on exactly what you write. If this video gave you plants you had not considered, biology you had not been told, and variety recommendations you could not have found by walking through a garden center, that is what this channel produces every single week. Zone-specific, research-backed, no filler. Subscribe so the next video finds you directly. The gardeners whose beds are still producing color and interest in October are the ones who made decisions like this one in July. One more thing before you go. Next week on this channel, the 5 biggest mistakes gardeners make when direct sowing in summer heat. And number 2 on that list is something almost every gardener does instinctively that cuts germination rates in half without them ever realizing it. That video goes live this week. If you are not subscribed, it will not find you. Hit that button now so it lands directly in your feed the moment it publishes. Now go. The window is open. The soil is warm. Everything on this list is waiting for you to make this decision. I will see you next week.